There's a mystery in the way God works with his daughters. We often think his favor only feels like comfort, but the truth is his preparation usually feels like breaking. The women God chooses to carry his purposes are rarely shaped in easy seasons. They are shaped in the fire, pressed in hidden places, and broken in ways that the world cannot understand. But listen carefully, that breaking is not punishment, it's preparation. It's not rejection, it's refinement. When God breaks a woman, he's not destroying her, he's building her into a vessel strong enough to carry the weight of glory and tender enough to release his heart. When we talk about breaking, revealing true strength, we are touching one of the deepest mysteries of how God shapes a life. It is natural to assume that strength is proven when everything is going well, when victories pile up and doors open without resistance. But the truth is, strength is not uncovered in seasons of ease. It is revealed in seasons of struggle. When a woman is pressed to the edge, when her heart feels shattered, when the weight of life seems too heavy to carry, that is when the real treasure God planted in her spirit begins to surface. It is in breaking that she discovers she is stronger than she thought, not because of her own ability, but because God's strength rises through her weakness. Imagine a seed placed in the soil. On the surface, it looks like nothing is happening, but under the ground, a process of breaking is taking place. The outer shell must crack open for the life inside to push through. Without that breaking, the seed would remain dormant forever, its potential locked away. In the same way, when God allows a woman to walk through breaking, he is not destroying her, but cracking open the shell that hides her real strength. What he placed inside her, resilience, courage, faith, can only be released when the pressure forces it to the surface. So many women underestimate what is inside them until hardship comes. It is only when the storm rises that they realize they can stand. It is only when the night falls that they discover they carry a light that darkness cannot extinguish. God knows this, and in his love, he sometimes allows breaking moments not as punishment, but as revelation. He wants his daughters to see what he already knows is within them. He wants them to learn that their story is not one of weakness, but of hidden power waiting to be revealed. Consider the story of a woman named Hannah. She longed for a child, yet year after year her womb remained empty. The pain of waiting broke her, driving her to tears before the Lord in the temple. Out of her breaking, a strength rose that surprised even her. She poured out her soul in prayer so intensely that Eli the priest thought she was drunk. But from that place of brokenness, God drew out the depth of her faith and perseverance. The child she eventually bore, Samuel, would become a prophet who shifted the course of Israel's history. Had she not been pressed, her prayer might never have reached such desperation, and her faith might never have revealed its true strength. This is how breaking works. It uncovers the strength that is hidden under layers of comfort, routine, and self-sufficiency. A woman may not know she can endure betrayal until it happens. She may not know she can rise after failure until she falls. She may not know she can carry the weight of grief until she has to. Each breaking moment reveals not just human grit, but divine grace working through her. The strength that surfaces is not simply her own willpower, but the Spirit of God within her, proving that she is capable of far more than she imagined. When a woman looks back after such seasons, she often marvels at herself. She wonders how she survived what should have broken her permanently. That is the revelation. The breaking didn't end her. It unveiled her. It showed her that what God planted in her was indestructible. In the end, breaking is not the exposure of weakness, but the unveiling of strength that was there all along. Breaking removes the shell of self, and this truth is one of the most powerful yet painful realities of walking with God. Every woman carries within her an extraordinary seed of purpose, something planted by God himself long before she even knew her own name. Yet, like any seed, what is inside cannot flourish until the outer shell is broken. That shell often looks like pride, fear, independence, or even the carefully built image of control. These things can protect us for a time, but they also prevent us from releasing the fullness of what God has designed. When God allows breaking, he is not being cruel. He is cracking open the parts of us that keep his treasure locked away. Think of pride as a shell. It's the voice that whispers, "I can handle this on my own. I don't need anyone's help." It may look strong from the outside, but pride is brittle. Fear is another shell, just as hard and restricting. It says, what if I fail? What if I'm not enough? Fear builds walls that keep us from stepping into destiny. And then there's self-dependence, the tendency to trust only in our plans, our efforts, our control. But the truth is, all these shells are illusions of strength. They keep us safe from vulnerability, but they also keep us small. God, in His wisdom, allows circumstances that break these shells, not to shame us, but to free us. When the shell of pride breaks, humility emerges, and humility is the soil where God's grace flourishes. When fear shatters, courage rises, because a woman realizes she has nothing left to lose except to trust God. And when self-dependence crumbles, surrender takes root. And surrender is the birthplace of divine power. What looks like loss in these moments is actually God making room for something greater. It feels like everything is falling apart, but in reality, what is unnecessary is being stripped away so that what is eternal can finally grow. A powerful example of this is found in the life of Esther. She began as a young Jewish woman, hidden and unknown, raised in exile under the care of her cousin. At first, her life was defined by survival and obscurity. When she was taken into the palace and crowned queen, she could have stayed hidden behind the shell of safety, pretending she was just another royal with no greater responsibility. Yet, when the decree went out to annihilate her people, Esther was forced to confront that shell of self-preservation. She had a choice: remain silent and protect her comfort, or break open and risk everything for her calling. Her famous words, "If I perish, I perish," marked the moment her shell cracked. Fear, pride, and the instinct to protect herself were shattered, and in that breaking, her true purpose emerged. She became not just a queen, but a deliverer for her people. What looked like the potential loss of her life was actually God making room for His greater plan to unfold through her. In our lives, it is often the same. We cling to comfort, reputation, or control, but God knows these shells will suffocate the seed of destiny inside us if they remain unbroken. The breaking hurts, but afterward, we find ourselves lighter, freer, more open to His leading. We see that the loss was not really loss at all. It was God clearing away what was never meant to define us. When the shell of self finally breaks, the woman God intends emerges. Her voice carries more authority, her heart more compassion, her faith more fire. She realizes that the breaking was not to destroy her, but to reveal her. The shell was never meant to last forever. It was only meant to protect the seed until the time of release. And when that release comes, she discovers that what God planted in her was far greater than what she ever tried to protect. Breaking deepens compassion in ways that nothing else can. Compassion is not just a kind word or a passing sense of sympathy. It is a depth of understanding and mercy that flows out of shared pain. A woman who has never walked through fire may feel pity, but a woman who has survived the fire carries empathy that reaches straight into another person's soul. God often allows breaking to touch the lives of those He intends to use so that their hearts will not grow hard, distant, or detached. Instead, through tears and struggle, their hearts become soft enough to carry His tenderness toward the hurting. When a woman endures deep loss, rejection, or disappointment, she begins to see suffering differently. She remembers the nights she wept alone, the prayers she thought went unanswered, and the weight she thought would crush her. And when she meets someone else in that same place, something inside her responds with a mercy that cannot be manufactured. She doesn't just say, "I understand." She actually does. Her words carry weight because they are born from experience, not theory. This kind of compassion cannot be taught in a classroom or explained in a lecture. It is carved into the heart through brokenness. God Himself uses this process intentionally. When He wants to entrust someone with His heart, He first allows them to feel some of His own sorrow for a hurting world. The breaking does not come because He delights in seeing His daughters suffer, but because He knows that those who will carry His healing power must also carry His mercy. Without compassion, influence can become harsh, judgmental, or self-centered. But when a woman has been broken, her words are gentler, her presence safer, her actions more patient. People do not feel condemned in her presence. They feel seen, understood, and embraced. An excellent example of this is the life of Joseph's mother, Rachel, though her story is often overlooked. Rachel endured years of barrenness while her sister bore children easily. The shame, jealousy, and heartache she carried broke her spirit deeply. Though her journey was painful, it birthed in her a tenderness that lived on in her descendants. Generations later, the prophet Jeremiah described Rachel as weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted. Though Rachel had long since passed, her legacy of compassion remained. She had suffered, and through her suffering, she became a symbol of the weeping heart of God over his people. Her personal breaking was transformed into a generational echo of divine compassion. In a modern sense, we see this every day. A woman who has walked through the valley of cancer often becomes the most patient encourager to those newly diagnosed. A mother who has buried a child is the one who sits silently with another grieving parent, understanding that no words are enough. A survivor of abuse becomes the voice of hope to someone trapped in silence. These women do not minister out of theory or duty. They minister out of wounds that God has healed, scars that now shine as proof of survival and grace. Their compassion is not shallow, it runs deep because it was born in the depths of their own pain. That is why only the broken can truly heal the broken. A whole, untouched life may inspire admiration, but a life that has been shattered and rebuilt by God inspires trust. People instinctively open their hearts to those who have walked where they now stand. Compassion born out of breaking is magnetic. It draws the wounded not to the woman herself, but to the God who comforted her in her darkest hour. In the end, the breaking is never wasted. It is transformed into a well of mercy that others can drink from. A woman who has been broken carries the fragrance of Christ's own compassion. She does not just tell the hurting that God cares, she embodies it. And through her, the broken discover that their pain too can one day become the very place where compassion is born. Breaking aligns identity with destiny, and this is one of the most transformative works God does in the life of a woman he intends to use. Every woman carries a set of names, labels, and identities placed upon her by the world, her family, her past, and even her own inner voice. These names often come in the form of lies. You're not enough. You're too much. You're forgotten. You'll never be more than your mistakes. Such labels sink deep and begin to shape the way she sees herself. She might carry shame from past decisions, rejection from relationships, or words spoken over her in moments of anger. Over time, those labels form a false identity, a distorted mirror that tells her who she is, but not who God says she is. This is why breaking becomes so necessary. When God allows breaking, he is not simply testing her endurance. He is stripping away every false name so that her true identity can come forward. Pain has a way of uncovering the lies we have believed about ourselves. In the breaking, she is confronted with the insufficiency of those old names. They do not sustain her when life is hard. They do not carry her through the valley. It is in that raw, vulnerable place that God begins to whisper her real name, the one he wrote before the foundations of the world, chosen, called, anointed, loved. Breaking often feels like loss because it tears down the version of herself she thought she needed to be. She may lose her reputation, her comfort, her achievements, or the approval of people, but what she gains is infinitely greater. She gains alignment with her destiny. No longer living from the labels of her past, she starts living from the identity of her future. The false names fall away, and in their place rises the name that carries divine authority and purpose. An excellent example of this is the life of Mary Magdalene. Before she encountered Jesus, she was known by her bondage, possessed by 7 demons, defined by her brokenness, and likely shamed by her community. To the people around her, she was a woman marked by failure and darkness. But when Jesus set her free, he broke the chains of that false identity. The breaking of her old life aligned her with her true destiny. She was no longer the outcast, but became one of the most faithful followers of Christ. And in one of the most profound moments of history, it was Mary who was chosen to be the first witness of the resurrection. Imagine this. The woman once labeled by her demons was renamed by her destiny as the first messenger of the greatest hope the world has ever known. Her breaking exposed the lies that had defined her, and in its place, God gave her a new name and a new assignment. This is what breaking does for every woman God intends to use. It takes the names of shame and replaces them with names of purpose. It confronts the false stories and rewrites them with the truth of heaven. It teaches her that she is not defined by her failures, but by the one who redeems her future. The breaking is the doorway where her identity finally catches up with her destiny, and when she steps through, she becomes unstoppable. When she looks back later, she realizes that what felt like devastation was actually liberation. The old names had to be broken off so that her true name could be revealed. The world may have called her forgotten, but God calls her chosen. The world may have called her too much, but God calls her anointed. The world may have said she wasn't enough, but God calls her more than a conqueror. And once she knows who she truly is, nothing can stop her from walking fully into the destiny God has written for her life. Breaking creates dependence on God, and this truth is at the very core of why He allows His daughters to go through seasons of shattering. Human nature leans toward independence. We like to believe we can manage life, solve problems, and hold everything together on our own. But God knows that the strength of self is limited, and the plans we make in our own wisdom cannot carry the eternal weight of His purpose. When a woman is whole in her own eyes, when she believes she has the answers, she often runs on her own power. But when she is broken, when everything she thought she could control falls apart, she is brought to a place where she has no choice but to lean on Him completely. This kind of breaking may feel like loss, but it is actually the gateway into true usefulness. A woman who depends only on her talent or discipline will go as far as her own ability allows. But a woman who depends fully on God can move mountains, not because she is strong, but because she carries the strength of the one who is limitless. Brokenness bends her knees in surrender. It forces her to lift her eyes upward when there is nowhere else to look. It strips away self, reliance, so that her life becomes the stage on which God's power is displayed. This is why dependence born of breaking is not weakness. It is the birthplace of unstoppable faith. When a woman realizes that she is no longer carrying her calling in her own hands, she becomes free. Her confidence is no longer rooted in how capable she feels, but in how faithful God is. Her heart begins to echo the words, "Not by might, not by power, but by your Spirit." In this place of surrender, her life becomes a channel of divine strength. She is no longer striving to make things happen. She is moving in rhythm with God's Spirit, and that makes her unshakable. An excellent example of this can be seen in the life of the Apostle Paul. Before his transformation, Paul was strong in his own accomplishments. He was educated, influential, and driven. But his encounter with Christ on the road to Damascus broke him, literally knocking him to the ground and even leaving him blind for a season. In that breaking, Paul's self-reliance was shattered. He could no longer lean on his status, his intellect, or his reputation. He had to depend completely on God for healing, for direction, for purpose. Later in his life, when he spoke about a thorn in the flesh, he explained that God allowed it to remain so that he would not rely on his own strength, but on the grace of God. His famous words, "When I am weak, then I am strong," show the paradox of breaking. His usefulness came not from his natural power, but from his dependence on the Spirit. In the same way, when a woman is broken and learns to depend on God, she becomes a vessel for His strength. She is no longer just a capable leader, mother, friend, or servant. She becomes an anointed instrument through which heaven touches earth. The world may look at her scars and think she is fragile, but in reality, she is stronger than ever because she carries a strength not her own. And when she walks into her destiny with this kind of dependence, there is no limit to what God can do through her. The breaking that once seemed like devastation reveals itself as the very doorway into divine partnership. Breaking produces unshakable faith, the kind of faith that cannot be shaken by circumstances, opinions, or even the fiercest storms of life. Faith is often spoken of in easy seasons, when everything is falling into place and prayers seem to be answered quickly. But true faith is not proven on the mountaintop, it is forged in the valley. A woman may think she has strong faith when life is smooth, but when everything falls apart, when relationships break, when finances collapse, when health fails, when dreams seem buried, that is the moment her faith is tested and refined. And it is in those very moments of breaking that her faith is transformed from something fragile into something unshakable. This kind of faith does not deny pain. It does not pretend that trials are easy. It looks honestly at the ashes and the ruins and still declares, God is faithful. A woman who has been broken learns to anchor herself in what does not change: his presence, his promises, his character. She comes to know God not just as the one who blesses, but as the one who sustains. She learns that when all else is stripped away, he remains constant. And once a woman has walked through that fire and found him faithful on the other side, her faith becomes fireproof. She no longer lives in fear of what could be taken from her, because she knows the one thing that can never be taken: his presence with her. What makes this faith so powerful is that it is not theoretical. It is lived and proven. It carries authority because it has been tested. Others may speak of God's faithfulness as an idea, but she speaks of it as a testimony. She has seen him hold her when she thought she would collapse. She has felt his peace in nights of despair. She has witnessed his provision when every resource ran dry, and because of this, no argument or trial can convince her otherwise. Her faith is not just belief, it is an anchor. An excellent example of this can be found in the life of Job. He was a man who lost everything: his wealth, his children, his health. His friends misunderstood him. His wife urged him to give up, and it seemed as if God himself was silent. If anyone had a reason to abandon faith, it was Job. Yet even in the depths of his breaking, Job declared, "Though he slay me, yet will I trust him." Those words reveal the essence of unshakable faith. Job was not trusting God because life was good. He was trusting God because he had come to know that God himself was good. And when restoration finally came, Job's testimony carried a weight that could never have been produced without the breaking. His faith was no longer shallow. It was tested and proved. For women today, the principle is the same. The diagnosis that should have crushed her instead becomes the soil where faith takes root. The heartbreak that could have left her bitter becomes the place where she discovers the comfort of God. The season of loss that stripped her bare becomes the season where she learns that he truly is enough. From these ashes, a new kind of faith rises, not the fragile faith of convenience, but the unshakable faith of conviction. And once a woman has that kind of faith, she carries it wherever she goes. Her presence strengthens others because she can say with certainty, "I have seen him faithful in the fire, and he will be faithful to you too." Her story becomes her testimony, and her testimony becomes a weapon. The breaking that once felt like the end reveals itself as the foundation of a faith that can never again be shaken. Breaking prepares her to carry glory, and this is one of the most profound reasons God allows his chosen daughters to walk through seasons of deep trial. Glory is weighty. It is not simply a shining presence or a beautiful feeling. It is the manifestation of God's power, holiness, and authority resting on a life. To carry such a weight requires more than appearance, more than talent, more than charm. It requires inner strength, humility, and purity that can only be formed in the fire of breaking. God will not entrust his treasure to a vessel that cannot hold it. He loves too much to let his glory crush a woman who is not prepared to bear it. This is why breaking is essential. On the outside, a woman may look strong, capable, and even spiritually mature, but God sees deeper. He knows where pride still lingers, where fear still whispers, where hidden wounds might leak under pressure. If he were to release his glory without preparation, it would overwhelm her. But through breaking, he ensures she is not only beautiful outwardly, but strong inwardly. The cracks of her brokenness become the very places where his light shines through, proving that the glory is not her own, but his. Breaking strips away self-reliance and teaches her to steward influence with humility. Without this process, she might be tempted to claim the glory as her own, to stand in the spotlight rather than reflect it. But when she has been broken, she knows the truth. She is only a vessel. The scars of her past remind her that everything she carries belongs to him, and that humility makes her safe in the presence of glory. An excellent example of this is found in the story of Gideon. Though not a woman, his story illustrates the principle clearly. Gideon was called by God to deliver Israel from the Midianites, but he began in weakness and fear. Through a process of breaking, tearing down idols, facing his doubts, and leading with far fewer men than seemed possible, God shaped Gideon into someone who could carry victory without stealing God's glory. When Gideon's army of 2,000 was reduced to just 300, the breaking was complete. Gideon could no longer rely on numbers, strategy, or strength. He could only depend on God. And when the victory came, there was no question who deserved the glory. In the same way, when a woman goes through breaking, it is God's way of preparing her for victories greater than she could ever imagine. The setbacks, the tears, the nights of questioning, these are not wasted moments. They are chisels in the hand of a master sculptor, carving her into a vessel strong enough to hold the treasure of his glory. What once seemed like weakness becomes the very testimony that magnifies his power. Her scars tell a story that draws people not to her, but to the God who brought her through. When she finally steps into her season of influence, people will see the glory resting on her life, but she will know it is not because she was perfect or unbroken. It is because she allowed herself to be broken and remade by God. The weight she now carries would have crushed her before, but because of breaking, she is not only able to bear it, she is able to steward it well. This is why the breaking should never be despised. It is not the end of the story, but the preparation for the greatest chapter. God is not simply interested in using her for a moment. He is preparing her to carry his glory for a lifetime. And when that glory rests upon her, the world will see a woman whose strength comes not from herself, but from the one who entrusted her with the treasure of his presence. So if you find yourself in a season of breaking, do not despise it. The breaking is not the end. It is the beginning. It means God sees something in you that the world needs. It means he's preparing you for influence, for ministry, for impact beyond what you could ever imagine. A broken woman in the hands of God is not a victim. She is a weapon. She is a healer. She is a voice. She is a carrier of revival. And one day, when she looks back, she'll realize the breaking was not to destroy me. It was to remake me into the woman God always intended me to be.